Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope you guys are well. I wanted to come in and chime in here. I'm going to be introducing this video of, I'm going to be sharing this piece of art that was created for the Rooster podcast. It was in a collaboration between myself and Owen Cyclops. By collaboration, I mean we spent the last couple months sending emails back and forth talking about the story of the rooster's crow from the Gospels and Peter's denial of Christ. And he really his vision of kind of my idea of what I was trying to get at was done. It was stunning and done brilliantly, and I'm just very grateful to him. Owen Cyclops, if Cyclops, if you don't know him, he is a digital artist. He's done some great work for Jonathan Peugeot. Actually, this artwork here that I have this T-shirt on was done by him in collaboration with Jonathan. So he was gracious enough to work with me, and he created this wonderful, wonderful piece of art, and it was essentially meant to be a logo, but I think it's more than a logo. It's something that is very meaningful to me, and it encapsulates the story of Peter's denial of Christ in a very subtle, beautiful, symbolically rich way. And before I get into the elements of the artwork, I'm going to share this video of Rene Girard talking about the story of Peter's denial in a very beautiful way, and he situates the context in our modern predicament absolutely wonderfully, talking about the tension between following the crowd versus following the truth, and how Peter, Christ's closest disciple, chose the crowd over the truth and was stunned by the realization, when the rooster crowed, at what he'd done. And the idea of the Rooster's Crow podcast is to engage with people, ideas, and culture that are playing this role, this shock role of realizing kind of what we're doing as a culture, and then providing kind of ways for metanoia, for changes of heart to happen within our hearts and our minds and our souls. So bear with me here. The audio is not super great with the video, but I'm going to try to increase it here in post. And I'm going to share the video, and then I'm going to come back in and share the artwork with you and go over some of the symbolism therein. So thanks for tuning in, guys.
But Peter's denial is probably one of the greatest scenes of the Gospels, not only in terms of literature. Some people say, oh, the Gospels do not have these great stories, like the ones we've been talking about, the judgment of Solomon or the Joseph story and so forth. And they would say, not true. There is Peter's denial, which is in a way the most beautiful story. Peter is all men there. Men cannot resist the mimetic contagion. When you're in a crowd, you become literally possessed by the crowd.
All right, just quickly, that part here of it really speaks to the contemporary moment that we're in terms of the crowd, and he's going to beautifully articulate our current predicament with choosing the crowd or choosing the truth here. And I think it's beautifully told in the story here, so I'll let him tell it.
The Gospels, one of the things they do from an anthropological viewpoint is to show you that the crowd spirit is all-powerful, that only Jesus can conquer it. Is all-powerful after Jesus, that it's a real power on earth, since it can conquer even Peter, which is pretty disturbing if you regard it as a prophecy, too, of what will happen at the last time, which it may well be, because right now that's what we are seeing. When people tell you that Christianity must be modern and follow the spirit of the time, what do they say? Follow the crowd, follow advertising, follow, what else could they say? You see, that's why I think we must refrain from following that spirit and listening to these voices, however pious they sound. You see, because Peter's denial is absolutely the amazing thing, you see. And Peter, when he hears the crowd, when he hears the voice of there is one of the Gospels that makes it very clear, that tells us that the servant is young, which I think is a very precious information too. I wouldn't say that Peter is in danger of being sexually seduced and so forth, but she's young, so she has some appeal. Why is it mentioned that she's young? If she were an old woman, maybe she would not get the same response from Peter. Peter has to show her that he's not part of that gang which is being judged and so forth,
Well,
Suddenly,
part of the friends of Jesus.
Yeah.
group, yeah.
That he's a friend of Jesus. He must surrender. And she says another thing, which in my view is extremely important. She says, anyway, I recognize you because you have that Galilean accent, which is unpopular in Jerusalem. In other words, you're a kind of foreigner. You're not even one of us, you know. You're a stranger. So what does Peter do? He wants to show he's one of them. And the only way you show you're part of a crowd is to join in scapegoating. If I have the same enemy you have, I am one of yours. So you really have, you know, in a very subtle way, indications of what the incentives are for Peter, which are universally human. That's why we must not say, oh, Peter is a special case. He betrays Jesus there because he's a weak individual, really. I don't think he's just the representative of all the apostles, since he's the head, you see. So so I think it's a scene which is absolutely priceless. There is no sociology, you know, and revelation of what living together does to human beings, you see. How come we all have the ideas of our time? You know, not so many centuries ago, everybody automatically believed in God. It didn't mean much. Today, automatically, no one believes in God. But it's purely a mob phenomenon. It's not because there are powerful scientific arguments, you know. It's Peter's denial. That's all it is. The Peter's denial is infinitely more powerful to tell you about what society is, you know, than any other text. Then, at the same time, the idea that Peter doesn't know what he's doing is extremely important. In other words, he's denying, not unconsciously, since but he's unconscious of what he's really doing. That's why maybe the most beautiful thing is the ending. Because in order to show unconscious, we say words like unconscious, they don't mean much. But the Gospels know very well how to represent very directly, very understandably, that unconscious. All they have to tell you, and then the cock was heard. And it reminds Peter of what he had conveniently forgotten, which was that Jesus had predicted the very thing that has been happening. And here you can see that the prediction of Jesus is not some kind, you know, of, what should I say, of divine inspiration. You see, because there again, you must, people say, well, Jesus, it's his father who teaches him that Peter is going to deny. Yes, it is his father, but it's also his human knowledge. The fact that he's infinitely, that because he listens to his father, he understands human communities infinitely better than all these guys, and he knows that Peter is going to find himself in a situation of collective pressure, of mob pressure, in which he will deny. So all we have to do is to say the cock crowed, and Peter started to cry. Peter suddenly, it was not the unconscious in the sense of Freud, he had put it out of his mind, but the cock reminded him, and there it was. So there is one gospel only which does it in a different way, which is less picturesque, but which is the same thing, which is the Gospel of Luke, that has Jesus meet Peter on his way, you know, because he's in the courtyard, and look at Peter. He only has to look at Peter, and Peter understands. It's the same as the cock. So that scene to me is one of the greatest in the Gospels. And it's only a few little touches, you know, it's a few words. When you think about the economy of these texts from a literary viewpoint, how much they can tell you in 3 words, you know, it's just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then he goes away. Well, he goes to the tomb. First, they say that he's they get the report that Jesus is risen.
Yeah.
He runs ahead. He finds it empty. No one there. So he goes away. He goes back to what he was doing before. He goes fishing again. Mm-hmm. And so he's a broken man at that point.
He's a broken man. But at the same time, in a way we attend, it's a second conversion for Peter. And it's a conversion very similar to Paul's conversion. Because what Peter discovers is that exactly the same thing as Paul. But Paul hears from the mouth of Christ, why do you persecute me? In other words, what Peter hears from Jesus is, you've joined the people who are crucifying me. Even you know. And you've done it in the most natural, unconscious way possible. without being aware that you are a kind of criminal. You're not, in a way. You are and you are not. You are forgivable if we understand everything, because you just behave like everybody else. And we all do in one way or another.
So when Peter says to the crowd, the Sanhedrin and the crowd, salvation comes from no one but him.
He knows what he's talking about at this point, after his denial.
That changes everything.
Yeah, that changes everything. Yeah.
All right, so here is the piece of artwork here. So this is the piece that was created by Owen. And as you can see, it's beautiful, rich in symbolism, beautifully done with terms of colors, the shapes, the different patterns that you see here. You see, the 8-pointed star, the two squares kind of offset. You see the world within a world, the circle within a circle. You see the Tai Chi yin yang symbol here. A lot of different things we could get into, but I wanted to just get into a couple of the central elements that represent and reflect Peter's denial of Christ. And first and foremost, in the bottom here, you see the red that reflects and represents the pomegranate, right? So a pomegranate is used in a lot of different ancient cultures and religions and worldviews. So in this particular situation, in this symbol, it's used as the church, right? So again, it's used in slightly old religious, it's used in Old Testament, in the Old Testament as well. And the pomegranate was used to symbolize the church, as it's a bunch of seeds, the individuals, all coming together to form one whole. It also reaches back into pre-Christian symbolism because of the story of Persephone, who descended into Hades. So it's kind of a connotation there that ties into some biblical themes, but also takes us beyond Scripture as well. And so the pomegranate, it has a door within it, right? So that represents the door to the church. And then outside of the pomegranate is nested within a rock. And of course, the rock is symbolizes Peter. Peter is known as the rock. It is, and here's a quote from Scripture here that kind of situates. It says, it's from Matthew 16. It says, and Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So, of course, you have the rock there, and then you also have the keys that you see here on either side of the rooster. So the keys, of course, represent and reflect the keys to the church that Christ also insinuated and articulated with regards to Peter. And the word Peter in Greek, Petra, means rock, literally means rock. So again, going back to Girard, that person, the disciple that was closest to Christ, the rock, it denied him in his time of need. And I want to use this to kind of reflect in our own lives, in our own culture, in our own civilization as to what's happening now as we deny the truth that's in front of us in favor of in-group and in favor of the mob, in favor of the crowd. Next, of course, we have lightning here on the top. You see the lightning bolt that is reflected by the rooster crowing. So this is the idea of metanoia, of the change of heart. So metanoia is the moment that this flash of lightning to indicate a turnaround moment, like this, because it's something instantly powerful that happens in a flash. And on a deeper symbolic level, the lightning and the rock, they're contrasted, right? Because lightning is locking into a single instant, but is pure action, whereas a rock is basically eternal and stable, but conversely cannot act. So they're kind of opposites. And I thank Owen for giving me this beautiful piece of artwork, and actually gave me that description as well. So you see this juxtaposition of north and south, of the rock and of the lightning, represented and reflected really beautifully here as well. Also, with regards to Peter, you see these two roads. You see the road to the east, which is shining forth of the sun coming up, the rising sun, right? The coming of the new world. And you see the road to the left, which it brings you into a city. You see with the star above it, it could be Bethlehem, but it also could be Rome, right? Because Peter taught and preached in Rome, and his St. Peter's Basilica is in Rome. I know there's some kind of controversy because there's not a lot of references in the Bible of Peter being in Rome. But, there's a lot of different things here. Another thing I wanted to bring up that's really done beautifully is that circle outside of the entire piece of artwork with the roses stitched there within, right? So the roses represent the Virgin Mary, right? The Holy Virgin Mary Theotokos. And there's the feast of the Day of the Icon, the Feast of the Unfading Rose is actually April 3rd here. It's April 3rd coming up in a few days, which is one of the feasts during the Great Lent. Also the Theotokos, the Mother of God, is also represented by the burning bush, right? The burning bush is burning without being consumed, and it is the place where the truth manifests itself, right? It is the place where God spoke to Moses. There's a lot of these different kind of quilt points or these different echoes that echo throughout all the different parts of the scripture. So it's beautifully done, encircling, encapsulating the whole entire piece of artwork here. And then again, you have the 8-pointed star that you see with those two offset squares there. So the 8-pointed star is the star of redemption, the star of resurrection, the star of regeneration. It represents baptism. And so the 8-pointed star the number 8 is traditionally the number of, again, regeneration. And thus many baptismal fonts have an octagonal base. Providing added significance is the assumption that Jesus was circumcised and named when he was 8 days old, which is a traditional Jewish practice. And baptism is seen as the New Testament equivalent of circumcision. Also, finally, 8 persons were saved in Noah's Ark, which is another Old Testament parallel of baptism. But there are a lot of older and subsequent religious and spiritual reflections that the 8-pointed star symbolizes. There's a lot more here. You see in the middle the yin yang and the Tai Chi symbol, in the center being the moon that's illuminated by the rooster crowing. So there's a lot more here, but I just wanted to give a kind of brief introduction here, and I wanted to share it with you guys. And I want you guys to, share back with me if you see some symbolism here and some other things that I didn't comment on. And I wanted to thank all of you if you guys are listening this far. I'm up to 1,000 subscribers, which is very much greatly appreciated by me. And I thank you all for tuning in and commenting on my videos. And I appreciate that you guys enjoy my content. And I hope to make more content that you guys, appreciate. So thanks so much. Let me know what you guys think of this video in the comments, and I will see you guys soon. God bless.